Welcome to our virtual Lunch with City Leaders. I'm Suzette Mahoney, most recently a partner at R2L Restaurant and the president of CCPA. On behalf of CCPA, we'd like to extend our heartfelt wishes that everyone is healthy and that you have the support that you need to endure this trying time. We are all navigating this unknown territory, and we want to assure you we are going to be by your side every step of the way as we figure out how to help Philadelphia's business community overcome the challenges that lie ahead. We will continue to shift our programming and networking offerings to best support our members and guests, and we'd love to hear from you, so we welcome all suggestions. You can put your ideas in the chat feature throughout our program today. Let's review a few details about today's event. We are recording this so we can share it afterwards. You are encouraged to use the chat feature to ask questions, which we will answer at the end. Feel free to comment, make suggestions, and connect with each other. We mute everyone to maintain audio and visual controls, but may invite you to unmute at certain times. And as a reminder, you are live on video, so if you need to take care of business, feel free to turn off your video. CCPA is an intimate and diverse group of business owners, executives, and managers looking to build relationships and offer each other meaningful resources. That hasn't changed. We will continue to bring you unparalleled access to speakers, decision makers, and leaders who are shaping Center City. We will also continue to keep our members and guests informed about business challenges and opportunities in Philadelphia and help them become Center City smart. To touch on a few of our upcoming events, our next Lunch with City Leaders is October 27th, with Joseph Forkin, the president of the Delaware River Waterfront Corporation, who just made a major announcement about developments on the river. Women Changing the City is October 14th, and our Meet the Developers event is October 28th. You can find a full schedule on centercityproprietors.org. And if you have suggestions for future speakers, please put them in the chat today. I'd like to acknowledge CCPA's sustaining sponsors and our preferred benefits provider, Michael Craig of Penworth Financial Services. And Lunch with City Leaders is made possible by Citizens Bank and our sponsors, Community College of Philadelphia, Friedman LLP, KYW News Radio, Levlane, Post Brothers, and Visit Philadelphia. And now I'd like to introduce Suzanne Spinell-Schuster, CCPA board member and Director in charge of Accounting Services at Friedman LLP.
Thank you, Suzette. And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Suzanne Spinell-Schuster, Director in charge of Accounting Services at Friedman LLP. As a CCPA board member, I am on the sponsorship and program committees. So if you have any ideas for events or speakers, please let me know. Friedman LLP has been serving the accounting, tax, and business consulting needs of public and private companies and individuals since 1924. In the wake of the most sweeping changes to the tax code in decades, with the inception of the CARES Act, PPP loan forgiveness, and other business challenges brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, our professionals continue to inform and empower our clients to best position themselves and their business for sustainability and success. Ask me for details or visit friedmanllp.com. Now, it is my honor to introduce today's speaker. Rebecca Rhynhart made history when she was sworn in as the first woman elected city controller for the city of Philadelphia in 2018. She brings private sector experience and nearly a decade of government service to the role of chief auditor and financial watchdog for the city of Philadelphia. I love that term, financial watchdog. Since taking office, Controller Rhynhart has pressed the city to strengthen its financial management through annual audits of internal controls over financial reporting of city departments. She has been vocal on issues affecting Philadelphia, like gun violence, sexual misconduct, the procurement process for the city's new voting systems, and the diversity of the city's workforce. Under her leadership, the office is committed to transparency and regularly releases data sets about city spending, as well as analyses of city finances and public policy. Her full biography is in the program that was emailed to you earlier. So please join me by waving a warm virtual welcome for Rebecca Rhynhart.
Oh, thank you so much for the introduction. It's so great to be here today. Thank you so much to all of you for taking the time. It's really a difficult time for Philadelphia, as it is for cities across the country, with the impact of COVID, as well as the impact on businesses in our city from the civil unrest. And there's a lot of challenges. So I just want to thank you for being part of this conversation today and for showing up. So thank you very much. Just a little bit about myself. For those of you who don't know me, I grew up in Abington, went to Abington High School, and then went off to college and grad school in New York, and stayed up in New York and worked on Wall Street for 7 years. Was a managing director at Bear Stearns, doing risk related to municipal derivatives. And really just saw there that a lot of governments didn't make the best financial decisions for themselves. They didn't understand the risks they were taking on or the profit being booked at their expense. And I really felt more and more that I need to go work for government to make government work better, because I'm very idealistic in that I believe that government can work, and it can only work if it's truly working for the people and the businesses, the residents of our city. That's when government really works. And so anyway, I left Wall Street in 2008 before Bear Stearns collapsed, and went to work for Mayor Nutter as his city treasurer, and was the city treasurer for 2 years, and then the budget director for the rest of Mayor Nutter's term, and then stayed on 1 year for Mayor Kenny as his chief administrative officer. And really proud of some of the things that I accomplished during those 9 years, but also started to feel more and more that to truly make the city work, to truly make, when I say make it work, operate in the best way possible, to operate efficiently, effectively, using best practices from other places, saving money that it can save so that it can invest those dollars to solve the pressing issues of our city. That is, what it means to me to be truly working. And I started to feel like unless I actually run for office and become an elected, I'm not going to be able to make the change I want to make here in the city and to disrupt things enough, disrupt in a positive way, of course. So I decided to run for office, and definitely most people did not expect me to win, but I think that my message of change and running the city better resonated with voters, and I won with 58% of the vote. So that was awesome. I took office in January 2018. And for those of you who don't know, the city controller is the financial watchdog of the city. So the chief auditor, as well as charged under the city charter to make the city operate as efficiently and effectively as possible. So I think that my role as city controller has even gotten more important with recent events, with the impact on COVID and the stay-at-home order on city finances. The role of the fiscal watchdog has, to me, I feel like gained more importance. So one of the things that I'm glad, Suzanne, I see your comment that you knew that I would win. Thank you so much. I love your enthusiasm and full-fledged support. Thank you. When my office did analysis on the impact of the stay-at-home order on city finances by sector, looking at tax by tax, and released that in April, which showed that the city would have about a $650 million hit to tax revenues. And just for a sense of scale, the city's general fund budget, which is the operating fund of the city, is about $5 billion. So it's a big hit. The mayor released his revised budget proposal, in May, which balanced the budget through the use of reserves, through some tax increases, as well as some pretty severe cuts to the arts and a few other items. And I just thought, there's got to be a better way to balance this budget. The city's budget increased by $1 billion in the 4 years leading up to COVID. And really, there's not that much, to show for that in terms of increased resident satisfaction. And that's according to, the city's own resident survey, that satisfaction did not go up with that increased spending. So I thought, well, if the budget went up by $1 billion and residents really weren't more satisfied, there's got to be a way to balance the budget without raising taxes on people, because, we're looking at, unemployment rates that are the highest since the Great Depression. And the last thing I think we should be doing at a time like that is raising taxes on people or on businesses. So I went through it, and my office released an alternative budget plan, which was published in the Inquirer and given to City Council for their use, which basically said we don't need to do that. We can balance the budget through running the city better, through action items such as overtime management, getting overtime per employee back down to $6,000 an employee instead of where it is now, which is $8,000. This is all adjusted for inflation, which would save about $40 million a year just by managing overtime. And a variety of other items like this. And these things sound dry or not that exciting, but this is where, for those of you, obviously you're business owners. So a lot of, when you're looking at a budget, you need to figure out, well, where do we save in order to invest? And overtime management is one really big area that the city could save money in. And I also think that, we shouldn't be cutting the arts in a very severe way, because we want to be a world-class city, and part of being a world-class city is keeping our cultural institutions. So, anyway, my office released that, and then we're also in the midst right now my office is doing an independent investigation into the city's response to the civil unrest following George Floyd's murder. And that, what we saw in the city was, and all of you, I'm sure, experienced this in some way, where there were seemingly heavy-handed tactics used on protesters at points, while at the same time businesses went for hours and hours, tens of hours in some cases, without having police show up and being looted. And that's not okay. To me, it's a failure of government. And the way I look at this is that taxpayer money is what funds the city's budget, is what funds the city's response to large-scale events such as protests. And we need to understand what really happened and why it happened, so that it never happens again, so that businesses do feel protected, so that people feel safe protesting. Protesting is a sense of free speech, and people should be allowed to protest, and people should also be allowed to open a business and feel that the police will come when they need them. And so I think that my office has hired 2 outside firms to do that investigation, and it will be released in December. And my hope for that is that by understanding fully what happens and why, that it won't happen that way again, that will give assurance to our people, to our businesses, that this is not, that was one event that happened that way. It's not going to happen that way moving forward. So in addition to the more recent work my office has done around COVID and the city's response to some of the social unrest, my office continues to do sort of the crux of its job, which is auditing. So I'm going to really excite you here, okay? Everyone with me? Yeah, everyone's excited? Good. Great, I'm getting some thumbs up, so I love that. Okay, cool. So my office audits every department every year. Oh, someone just said we love audits. I love that. I'm so excited that you love audits. So we audit every department every year. We do the financial audit of the city. We do the audit of internal controls over financial reporting. And that's the audit that my office does, that audit every year. That audit back in 2018 was the one the audit that highlighted that the city hadn't reconciled its largest cash account in 3 years, and that $33 million was unaccounted for. Unacceptable, of course. I'm sure you remember this happening. My office did the same audit this year, released it last month. And found that there's been some improvement. The city is now reconciling its largest cash account, and the majority of that 33 million was located, except for about 528,000, which was written off. It never should have happened, though. And what we found this year was that the city of Philadelphia continues to have the most material weaknesses and the most significant deficiencies of any of the top 10 largest cities in internal controls. And that's just not acceptable. And if New York can do it better and Chicago can do it better, then we can do it too. And this financial controls, internal controls sound dry and boring, but to me, that's the safeguards for the taxpayer money. That's what is protecting the money from fraud, and we need to do it better than that. So in addition, my office does the audits of departments looking at overtime, management, and sick leave abuse. Again, those are things that, might seem a little dry, but so important to saving money to make sure that sick leave rules are being followed. So people can't call out sick, day after day after day without a note or without being excused and still get paid. That's the type of thing that we want to avoid from happening. So then in addition to the financial audit side, my office has been working on issues that also have financial importance, but also have social impact. And one example of this is the audit my office did of the sexual misconduct policies, procedures, and payouts, which looked at really what are the city processes for reporting sexual harassment and for investigating the claims and then for disciplining, because the way I look at it is that the city settles claims against, employees for sexually harassing other employees, and the city pays out millions of dollars. And so the question is, this is taxpayer money again, and is everything done that could be done to make sure there's processes in place to prevent harassment for both a safe workplace as well as to limit future payouts. And my audit found significant need for improvement. The mayor's administration made some changes around training, some changes, but didn't and still hasn't implemented the core recommendation which was to centralize all reporting, investigating, and discipline outside of the departments to avoid any potential bias and to ensure consistency around the process. So that'll continue to push on that. That hasn't fully, that hasn't been implemented at this point. And then my office has taken, leaned in on the issue of gun violence. We did an analysis on the financial impact of gun violence, of homicides in Philadelphia. We released that last October, basically saying, of course, the moral impact, of course, the human impact of gun violence is huge. And that is what, that is the true cost, is the human cost. But in addition to that, there is a financial cost to the status quo. And I say the status quo because allowing this gun violence to continue is a failure, I think, of government, because other cities have shown ways to reduce this gun violence. There are programs that have been proven to work in other cities. Oakland got their homicide rate down by 50% in 4 years just by implementing these 3 programs. New Orleans got theirs down by 26% in 2 years. These 3 programs, and these are programs we should be doing here in Philadelphia. So we released that, and I continue to lean in on this issue of gun violence, about best practice, about what we should be doing to prevent gun violence, especially with a homicide rate right now that is 35% above last year. We are right now on track for the highest homicide rate since the mid-1990s this year. So I don't say this to depress you all. I think that the city's amazing and we'll get through all of this together. But I do want to lay out that there are problems and are challenges that need to be fixed. And my office has also leaned in on how is COVID impacting the businesses of our city. And we've done 3 parts of a 4-part series, although my office recently told me that they want to do a 5th part. So I don't know whether to say it's 4 parts or 5 parts, but it's the impact of COVID on businesses. And we're looking at it by neighborhood, by sector, to say who is most impacted. And then we're also have been looking at it, well, who we're about to release, what businesses, what sectors, and what neighborhoods receive the federal PPP loans. And the reason that I think it's important to release this type of information is to provide a roadmap for strategic investment going forward, because that's going to be the question. How is small business going to recover and rebuild out of this? And how can government assist in that? And what is the best way to use limited resources? So, I mean, I would say overall that I think Philadelphia needs some real change in how our government works. I think we need to disrupt things a bit. We need to really change, make some change. And I think there's really 3 ways to sort of tackle this and go about it. I think the first is to really look at all of the city operations and say, what are we really running here? And what outcomes do we want? What do we want to gain from doing this operation? Whether it's firefighting or streets or homeless services. And then how do we create, if we were to create this from scratch, this budget from scratch, how would we do it? What would we fund? And I bet that would look very different than the way it's set up now. And that is considered a best practice that other cities have done. I think that looking at our operations that way would go a long way to freeing up resources to then be put into areas such as education or reducing poverty, and the gun violence, to really move the needle and help people in our city. And then I also think that we need to really look at how do we encourage small and medium-sized business growth in our city. What do we need to do to foster and organically grow our own businesses? And I think that often the way it's viewed in discussion is, are you pro-business or pro-worker? And I think that you can be both. You can be pro-business, pro-small and medium-sized business. And if you provide an environment where small, medium-sized businesses can grow, then you're fostering job development. And if you get jobs with good wages, then you're going to make a dent in the poverty numbers of our city, which would then just really move our whole city forward. So I think we need to look at what are the main impediments to business, whether that's tax rates, whether that's any other issues, and make changes to encourage and foster small business. And then I think we also just need to approach the problems of our city with empathy for each other, but then also some common sense. We need to say, look, listen to everyone's opinion and then say, what's the best decision, and make a decision and push forward on that decision and lead through it. And I think if we do those things, that we can really move forward. And, you know, I would say one last thing before I open it up to questions, and that's really just that I know that this is a really tough time for businesses in our city, and there's a lot of uncertainty and around, you know, the health issues of the COVID, and also just at the local level about what is our city going to look like, and what is it going to look like as we come out of this. And I would just say that I think that we all have to just stick together and stick in this together. And our city is going to be amazing. Our city will be better than it was before, but we all just have to stick together. And, you know, really, I just can't thank businesses enough for what they do and give for our city's fabric. So thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. That was awesome. Ernie, do you have one or two questions you wanted to start with?
Sure, Ben. I've got to read them because I can't remember them all fully off the top of my head. But Rebecca, you mentioned a $1 billion increase in the city's budget over the last 4+ years. I guess the question is, are there savings in the city's operation that would allow us an increase in funding for the schools, job development, helping the homeless and those with mental illness, and cleaning up the city without increasing taxes and fees?
I think the short answer to that is yes. What I think, and I outlined some of them in the alternative budget proposal I put forward back in May, but I think what really needs to happen is this full-scale looking at the city's operations sector by sector and saying, how do we re-envision this? And that will save a lot of money. That's what I would say, that there needs to be an emphasis on really reviewing each area of our budget. I mean, some things haven't been looked at in a really long time. And if we brought in people from the private sector and nonprofit and entrepreneurs and said, what is this? What could be a best practice, or what could be a different way of looking at it, and move from there? But I think absolutely, yes. I think there is opportunity. And, you know, I mean, from every crisis, right, there's an opportunity. And I think this budget crisis does bring an opportunity to look at the city's operations and make some changes.
Bill Mignucci, you had a question?
Good afternoon, everyone. Rebecca, it's good to see you. We've known each other for years, and I'm grateful for your leadership. I'm pretty confident I speak on behalf of most of the people in CCPA, which I've been a member for many, many years. I might need help, but double-digit years. I think what troubles me the most during these times, and even prior to 2020, is the lack of, I'm going to say, business advocacy messaging coming from City Hall. I think, you know, the business community, small, medium, and large in Philadelphia, as you mentioned, has a lot of it will be the source of a lot of solutions and job creation. But unfortunately, I, as a business owner, have not, since Mayor Rendell, frankly, in my opinion, felt that City Hall has consistently been advocates of business. And that is more of a statement, I think, than a question. That's the way I feel. And I hope the next leader who runs our city realizes that a lot of the solutions, both economically and socially, can be supported by business leaders. I know me as a leader would love to contribute to bettering our city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. I just don't sense that the opportunity is there from our leaders in the city. I would say one thing that kind of stung me this year, and I think again one others, is Memorial Day weekend, the rioting happening, and many businesses were impacted. And then because of the delay in tax filing, I think it was about 2 weeks later, we all had filed taxes, and I got this huge business privilege bill. And I just said, oh, this one hurts more than ever because I think more than ever, and I've been operating DeBruno's for 30 years. I felt that tax of business privilege 2 weeks after I felt the city was inappropriately, handle the situation.
Yeah.
Both police enforcement as well as the riots on all angles. It stung me, and it kind of reminded me this business privilege, if I am going to obviously have to pay it, I need to have an opportunity to have a voice to improve this city. And I'm not going to rely on City Hall, but I don't feel there's an open dialogue. So thank you for letting me just share that, Rebecca, because you and I have talked in the past, and I'd love you to pay that forward and cascade that message whenever you can. I feel as a business owner, we need better open dialogue. My question, the budget deficit, I'm confused how the city has been able to put their arms around it when the city continues to be, to me, shut down. I don't see the traffic and the people. And I mean, do we really know this deficit as a result of lack of sales tax and businesses opening? Do we understand the reality and impact of this deficit, or could it be twice as much as we realize? How are we projecting out, through the end of the year? Because I don't see the city's vibrancy, and I'll just say sales tax and tourism. I don't understand how we can even think that we understand the deficit. Just wanted to hear your opinion.
Sure. I think what my office did was look at sector by sector just for the next year. So, assuming that if you look at the hospitality industry and assume that, there's a 90% decline, and then in 5 months or 6 months, it goes up to just a 75% decline. What we did was we looked at it sort of sector by sector. With that said, our analysis, and we're going to be rerunning it, but what we did was we set up a model, and I have a group, my analysis unit of my office does stuff that I can't, they model things. I can't do it, but that's why I've hired them. But I think that, the modeling expected, a stay-at-home order and sort of an impact that would be done in, 6 to 9 months. So I think that it will be longer. And then the question is, what will be the long-term impacts of any changes in behavior, in work behavior, in terms of people continuing to work from home, or what will companies do with their office space? I think there's a lot of unanswered questions. So there's a lot of uncertainty, Bill. So you're right, and I agree with that. I think that the budget shortfall that I was referring to had to do with the fiscal 21 budget. And then the process will sort of restart again this spring for the next year's budget.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
We had a question from Teresa.
I just want to say, Rebecca, I agree with you. I do think that each and every department that is spending money in the city should be audited. After all, everybody on this call, I'm sure, has audited each and every department in their business, and everyone has made changes. I do think it's a disgrace that the city has not done that. And it does completely need to be looked at and changed. And also, as far as money that's being put out to help small businesses, that definitely needs to be looked at, because even pre-COVID, I don't think the city was doing a good job, and I think a lot of money was wasted.
Okay.
And the only other thing that really bothers me, and I am a city resident, born and raised, and I love the city, and I still love the city, is we have people coming from the suburbs and all over into the city, and they are making a lot of money. They were not necessarily affected by COVID in a way that a lot of other businesses were. And they have a lot of negative things to say about the city. Yet they are earning their livelihood here. And I really think the city needs to look at that, because there's a lot of people that live in the city that can do them jobs. And I mean, I just think it's important. If your livelihood is going to come from my tax dollars, you shouldn't be walking around talking bad morning, noon, and night about the city. It does not help with the situation. Thank you.
Ben, can I ask a question?
Yeah, I was just going to go to Steve Masters,
Okay,
and then John.
thank you, Ben.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hi.
This fall, looks like council is going to be moving forward with the proposal for a public bank in the city, something that's been incredibly successful in the state of North Dakota for over 100 years, and it's being adopted in multiple cities across the country. I wonder if you've taken a look at that proposal that Councilman Green is going to be putting forward, and if you and your office have a position on it.
So the topic of a public bank, I think that my office hasn't taken an official position on it. I think the idea of using public money to set up a bank that would be government run, so that basically the fees wouldn't go to a Wall Street bank, and then being able to make investments. The concept, I get the concept. My concern and my question on it would be, and is, creating another governmental entity. And I just feel that it would be, there's just, I feel like we as a government need to figure out how to do better what we do already, before adding on more responsibility and another structure. But I think I understand the idea. So I just have questions around it, I guess is what I would say, just because I worry about adding another governmental entity, which then could be a place for patronage, it could be a place for waste, and even though that's not the intent, that's my only sort of question. But I do see the intent and the purpose behind it.
Do you also see the upside in providing more capital to small businesses in the city, and in basically adding to the financial resources that are available to lift the city up?
Yeah, I mean, is there a way? Maybe we could take this conversation is really interesting. Sure. Maybe we could take it offline, because my question would be, is there a way to do that, to have extra resources to invest in small business without creating another governmental entity? I wonder. I just wonder. I don't know.
Okay.
But I would like to talk to you about it. Seriously,
All right.
I will.
Sure. Okay.
I would like to talk to you.
Great.
Okay.
We'll set that up.
Okay.
John, as long as you're not driving, John, please go ahead.
I am not. I'm waiting to get into my office. I just came back from lunch, so in the parking lot. Rebecca, thank you. Last time I saw you, you were before Mike Sklaroff's development workshop group.
Oh, okay, great.
That was a great question about our school system, and all the public entities, all the governments are hemorrhaging, of course, financially. And I know this is a near and dear to Councilman Dom's heart, and I think he's on this call. I saw his name. Is there enough money to keep our kids educated with state and city governments hemorrhaging? And I mean, that's our future. Beside everything else that's going on, is there a backstop to keep our kids? And this includes charter schools. Is there a backstop to all this?
Yeah, I mean, my answer to that would be there has to be, because there are kids.
Yes. Yeah.
And, you know, my daughter is actually in 5th grade in Philly public schools. And I think that we're going to need to figure that out. And I think some of it depends on who's elected in November and what type of aid comes to cities across the country. And we're going to need to sort that out. I mean, I don't see, the answer can't be that we don't have enough money to provide a good education to our kids. It just can't be. And I think in order to keep people in Philly and not to go to the suburbs, we need to make sure that our school system is on a trajectory of improvement and not one of being decimated. So I don't know the exact answer at this point, but I will say that there has to be one. So it's to be continued, you know?
Thank you.
And you comment on the city's DROP program and should it be eliminated?
So the DROP program, Deferred Retirement Option Program, the program that I'm sure you all know of that enables city employees to pick a date 4 years in the future and say, I'm going to retire 4 years from today. And they get paid their salary still for those 4 years, but also builds up their pension payment for the 4 years in a special account, and then get that lump sum at the time that they leave. This is what a DROP, and I sit on the pension board. That DROP has been found, because during the Nutter administration, there were attempts to change, that it has been deemed, to my understanding, subject to collective bargaining. And what that means is it can't just be eliminated, that it needs to be part of the union negotiations. And so that is up to the administration in their negotiations with the union. And it can't just be eliminated any more than any other change. I think that city employees love DROP. And I say this with understanding. If you were a city employee, you would like it too, okay? Does it serve the taxpayers a purpose? Does it serve? No, absolutely not. Does it serve a management purpose, which is what its intent was? I will say, from working in the city for 9 years, as an employee, as a manager, it does not serve any management purpose, okay? So I think, you know, in a perfect world, would it have ever started? No. But now it's subject to collective bargaining, so it has to go through that process. So it's not a great answer, but I think that's the way where it stands.
Okay, there's a lot of activity in the chat. I'm gonna go on. Do you have any comments on how the city can ensure safety of people returning for arts and culture at night?
So a feeling of safety. I mean, safety, people need to feel safe in the city. And I think that feeling, the feeling of safety that people had in Center City and some other neighborhoods has been shaken, understandably. I think that we need to rebuild that. I think that that's about bringing the violence rate down, making sure that people feel safe, having a police presence, making sure, you know, that our city is protected. I think there's no, that's really the answer. I think there is a fear, and it's understandable from what's happened. People are scared right now, and that's understandable. We have to rebuild that.
Okay, Greg says, I like the idea of building a roadmap for strategic investment going forward and creating a new budget ground up. In this process, what do you see as the role of philanthropic capital to help address issues and pursue opportunities related to education, parks, housing, etc.?
I love that question. So, I mean, I love all the questions, don't get me wrong.
Thanks, Rebecca.
So my vision would be that when the city truly looked at all of the different areas and what would be a best-in-class operation, how could it run itself the best, and did everything it could to reimagine its operations, its budget, and then said, you know what, we really have need in X, Y, and Z places. And if we had additional investment there, the return on investment would be so great. We could really move the needle. And we will set up a system so that it's measurable, that there are metrics that we will report back on an annual basis to the philanthropic community, to the donors, to say, is it working or not? I think that's where those areas will be. And to me, if we got to a place where the city was really running in the best way possible, I think that I would lean like wholeheartedly into the asks to our philanthropic community to say, can you help? Because you have seen other cities, the philanthropic community, foundations, private sector, sports teams really join forces in an amazing way. And I do think that that hasn't happened here to the same extent. And it's an opportunity, absolutely.
Okay, from Sharon. I appreciate your optimism on the future of Philadelphia, but as a sole proprietor business, resident, and mom of a second grader, what changes do you see in the next 5 years to convince me to stay?
Good question. I think that we need to ensure the safety of people and businesses. That's sort of the basic ground zero of government responsibility. We need to do that. We need to make sure that the school system is improving. And those are things that are not easy. And right now, I think people are, some people are definitely thinking about, should I stay in the city? I think that there is a vision and a path forward. There absolutely is, because of the vibrancy of the city and all of the amazing things in the city, culture, businesses, people, all of this. But we need to fix things. So I would say why should you stay? Or in 5 years, I would say in 5 years, we can be in a much, much better place for you, for your business, and for your second grader who will then be in 7th grade.
You may have addressed some of the school issues, but the question is, can you address some of the core issues that need to change over the next several years for our city schools?
I think the schools, there's a good number of decent schools in the school system, and then there's a good number of schools that aren't good or safe, and it needs to improve. Funding needs to be, part of the issue is at the school level. Part of the issue is in the spare funding, in the way the state determines funding for the Philadelphia schools. And that much less is spent per student in Philly than in the suburbs. And I think that there does need to be sort of emphasis and push on a few different areas, on the state to change the way they fund, on the school district to make sure that each school is running in the best way it can. And then also I think we need to provide services. A lot of the kids in our disadvantaged neighborhoods are experiencing trauma, and it's untreated, and from living in such violence. And I do think that is also treating that trauma is a part of improving the academic achievement of our students.
Could you speak more on your work on gun violence homicide issue?
Sure. So, this is an area when I first came to office in January 2018 that I was watching the homicide rate go up. And I thought, well, this isn't my lane though. I'm the controller. But as it's continued to rise, I started to feel more and more, well, I have to do something. As a city leader, and our kids are dying, our people are dying in our city. 1,400 people have been shot this year so far in our city, that I have to do something. So we released the economic impact of gun violence in October 2019. What that study did was build upon a study done by a Washington, D.C. think tank, the Center for American Progress, that was done a while back, that showed that the biggest cost of gun violence, even when you look at health costs and ambulance costs and all these different costs of a single shooting, the biggest cost is the cost to the municipality in the decline in home value. And so that is what we analyzed the impact on residential home value for every homicide in Philadelphia. So that we did that, and then we analyzed the city's $15 million spend on anti-violence programs. We released that in January and found that the vast majority of what the mayor's administration is spending on anti-violence are not on actual programs that have been found to work to reduce gun violence. They might be good programs for other reasons, blight removal or larger anti-poverty programs, but what's been found is that the programs most likely to work on reducing violence target specifically those most likely to shoot. So I'm continuing to work on the issue of gun violence, and you'll see more from my office soon.
Michael, did you want to explain your question or ask your question?
Yeah, hi, Rebecca. It's Mike Chakowski from Republic Bank. As we come out of the pandemic, is the city worried for loss of revenue from the Penn campuses and the larger facilities? I've spoken to many of our customers that reside in them, and they've been telling me that they've had great proficiency in the ability to have greater production within their businesses working remote, and really have done some out-of-box thinking that potentially they would want to continue that post-pandemic. Does the city have any plans to either help them, or more importantly, is the city worried that that loss of revenue from a tax perspective could hinder the budget for years to come?
I think it's a really good question. I think the question around what are people's long-term patterns and business, the universities, also businesses. It's a concern of mine, and I think that it's too soon to say exactly what that impact will be. And I think, though, in that same regard, we should also be thinking about how do we as a city market our city to those that perhaps even work for a New York company but work remotely and could actually live in Philadelphia. And how is the country and the work patterns changing? So how can we take advantage of other opportunity? But the short answer to your question is, yeah, there is concern, and I don't think, I think it might be too soon to know exactly what the impact will be, but definitely I'm concerned. It's concerning.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think a few people have a common question, which is, what are your thoughts and considerations on becoming the first female mayor of Philadelphia?
Nice question. I think, honestly, I'm just really focused on doing my job, and I do have a re-election next year. So I am up for re-election as the city controller in May. And I know that's not what everyone's thinking about right now, because there's obviously a much bigger presidential election. But after the presidential election, the next one's going to be mine. No, but I am up for re-election, so I'm focused on that, but I do, do what I can do to support emerging women leaders, and I do think that it's important to have diversity of gender and of race and ethnicity in leadership. So that's my vague answer to your question.
So I think if anybody has, that's it for the chat. If anybody has another question, we probably have time for one more. Or if there's anything we didn't ask you and you'd like to mention.
I would just say that, I think this conversation's been great. I think that there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and I just think it's really important that we continue to talk, and that government supports businesses and helps business. So I think we've covered a lot of ground today, actually.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, we'd like to thank you for your time and everybody else for joining us. If you're not a member of CCPA, consider joining today. We could use the support as well. We're going to keep planning these events and other events online. So we're going to end the call now, but if people do want to stay on for a little networking or to meet anybody didn't meet in the beginning, we're happy to stay here. But thanks again. And Rebecca, thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.